So good evening, everybody. Thanks again for joining us. I think we've got another fantastic webinar due. So this is going to be really good. We're looking forward to sharing some insights with these two gentlemen, which will get them to introduce themselves. As always, if we could just keep your mics switched off, that would really appreciate it. We will have time at the end for any questions. And please, as we always do, the chat box is open. Phil will be monitoring the chat box. So please, if you do have any questions, fire them in. The whole point of this webinar is to help share some insights that the four of us have developed on our journeys along the way, and we want to share them. But also, as you go on your journey, we want you to ask the questions so you can get the most from this webinar. As always, as Phil said, this is recorded. So what we will do is we'll send the recording out. So if there's anybody that you know that also wants this, please do share the recording. You know, one of our missions, which it's great guys from the guys from Rehab Guru also about, is to try and help as many people as possible improve their therapy businesses. So please feel free to share the recordings and the learnings from this. Right, let's get cracking. So we thought this webinar would be brilliant because the last one we discussed, if you remember, and we talked about sales and marketing. And one of the things that we really focused on was one of the things that me and Phil see an awful lot in the therapy world was that loads of businesses focus on the sales and marketing, but don't really understand what their product is. And if you remember from the webinar we did last time, we really took some time to kind of look and explore about the products of therapists is their customer service. It's how they communicate, and it's how they help a client along a journey to achieve an outcome that they want to achieve. Now, we know from a business perspective, this helps with return on investment, reputation, and is one of the best formulas for clinic growth. I was introduced to these wonderful gentlemen through quite a few mutual friends, and their whole vision, the whole passion, everything they're about really aligns with everything we're. So we're really lucky to have the two founders of Rehab Guru with us this evening, who are going to share some insights behind why they created their product, and then also explore this idea of customer experience. So I'll hand over to you two if you want to introduce yourself and tell everybody a little bit about yourselves.
Go on, so off you go.
Cool. Cheers. That's the first time I've ever been described as a wonderful gentleman, I think. So I'll try and live up to that throughout this. But hi, everybody. My name's Simon Taylor. I'm, as Andy said, co-founder of Rehab Guru. My background is from 19 years in the Air Force, where I was a exercise rehabilitation instructor. So that's my kind of clinical side. And then halfway through that career, I commissioned as an officer and then moved into sort of technical world of software engineering. And it is from that sort of era where Rehab Guru was kind of born from. So I now stand as the technical lead of Rehab Guru, but all of that sort of technical work is built upon sort of a little bit of background in clinical work. But I lean on Dave mainly for the clinical expertise. And Dave, I'll hand over to you now.
Thanks so much, Si. Thanks for having us. It's lovely to be on the webinar with you. And my name's David. Thanks for having us. Originally trained too many years ago in physiotherapy. And one thing that we were talking about before was sort of why we started in physio, and it was to be a great physio. And thankfully, I got to work with some great people. So I worked in professional sport, I worked in the military, mixture of sort of Green Army and polytrauma from Afghan. So I had a real mix of different healthcare backgrounds with a little bit of private medicine thrown in, sort of private clinics. And worked with Simon, blimey, when was that? About 12, 15 years ago, where we both worked together in the military. And the concept of Rehab Guru started because the customer experience just wasn't great. You know, people's compliance, their retention within the rehab journey was just wavering. And they turn up to their appointments with all of these booklets, not really quite knowing what to do without any real direction. And we just thought, God, it's got to be some better way of doing this. So we bootstrapped Rehab Guru, meaning that we created it ourselves, with Si being the software architect and me adding all the content and being sort of customer journey. So if anyone's messaged in on Rehab Guru saying, how do I do this, that, and the other, it's normally me that's making a little video or setting up a demo with them. So for anyone that's watching that knows me, hello, lovely to see you again. But that's enough waffling.
That's perfect introduction. And it kind of leads us into the question of which, we get asked a lot, and I'm sure lots of other people in the industry get asked about what is, exercise software. I think now is fair to say a lot of people are familiar with it. I think a lot of people may have it. Hopefully all listeners to this have moved beyond the stick man or the piece of paper. But if you are listening, then these guys have got a really good platform I would check out. And so there seems to be, in this exercise software space, there are quite a few names, shall we say. And I guess that was the part for me. What was interesting about you guys is, what did you see differently? What was it that you feel that, because your platform, and I'm hopefully we're going to demo this very shortly as well, because I think it's really interesting to see what you guys have done. But when I looked at it, it was so multifaceted. It was brilliant. And that was the bit that I was really curious about. So what was it that you saw in the industry, and I know you've touched on some of that, Dave, that you thought wasn't there and still isn't in a lot of other software, you don't have to name names, that you were trying to solve a problem for therapy business owners?
Well, I think the main thing was feedback. So the unique thing about the environment that Simon and I used to work together in the military was that it was an inpatient admission rehab. So people would be with us every day for 3 weeks, the whole day from 8:30 until 4. And you'd get to know them, and they'd get a certain rapport and comfort talking to you and communicating with you, that they'd end up after a few days saying, can't you do this? Or can't the exercise programs you give us do X, Y, and Z? That we ended up with all of this feedback. And it's that gave us the creativity and the ideas. And I think it set the tone for a culture we have stuck to within our company, which is that although it might have looked like build it and they will come to start with, actually over the last 5 years, it's looked all like customer engagement. Tell us what you want, rather than us telling you how you should be a better physio. Because when I'm giving demos to people, I can often feel like I'm just talking at them. And it's really, really important instead to listen and say, how are you currently working? What does your workflow look like? Because we might think we've solved all of their problems, but if they've got a massive headache with having to change their workflow and change the way they do things, then actually it's quite similar to asking a patient, well, can you completely change your lifestyle? It's quite hard to do. And so sometimes you've got to be able to fit the software into the way the person works. And that's why it is quite vast. It's flexible, so that if you've used one platform before and you've become used to that workflow, you'll be able to migrate to Rehab Guru easily. And if you've never used software before, but you've used Facebook, you've used Google or whatever, there is enough of a transition with maybe, the odd help video here that just helps. But ultimately, we need to just keep improving it as people give us the feedback. So for me, that sort of answers the question. I don't know if you've got anything else to add to that.
Yeah, I think back when we were creating Rehab Guru, it was kind of, how can you give a far better experience than a badly drawn stick man on a piece of paper? So it's kind of like you send people away with an overly photocopied piece of paper, and they derive their value in that program from what they leave the clinic with. And if you can give them like a really, really high quality exercise program, they're going to be like, wow, there's been some work put into this. This looks really professional. I'm probably going to, definitely follow this. So that's how it kind of started off. But then very quickly, we realized that once we were in the digital space, there was just a raft of opportunities that you can start to exploit digital for. And that is being able to have two-way connections between your patients, get data and actually start measuring things properly. And then from then on, you're in a far better position to start to make clinical or data-led clinical decisions. So I think it was the opportunity of, initially replacing the stick man, but then after that, there was just this, opportunity that digital presents. to completely redefine sort of traditional business models?
I mean, the things I take from that is great, and it'd be good to maybe shortly expand on the culture behind it, because I think that's really important for people to understand, you know, what drives this, the passion that you two have for this product, and why, you know, we wanted you on, because I think it's there. The big tip I got from you, Dave, when you were talking about it came from feedback, was I think for businesses listening, you know, you've created a product based on the feedback you've got. One of the flaws that we see in therapy business owners that we work with or talk to is they're afraid to ask for that feedback, or they don't ask for it at all. So how do we improve the service we've got if we're not asking for that feedback? And there's you guys who have gone, we've built a product, and then actually, because of all the feedback we got, we realized that actually we could make an even better product that suited the market and suited the needs of people doing it. And I think as the therapy world is expanding, I think we're all very familiar with how private health is going to go with NHS. I don't know what it's like in all the different areas, but in, you know, private is only going to increase, which means competition is going to go up. But also, we also know there's an economic crisis. So actually, you looking at your customer experience, you looking at your customer communication, you becoming the best in your locality is only going to drive your business up. So the better you have, the better feedback you get, the more customers you can improve, you know, that's only going to help, I think. So I think that's a really lovely tip that what you've created that we can share, and hopefully people then take on. And then Simon, you use my favorite words of all time, data. You know, so I know there'll be people on here who's listened to me talk around my KPI data, and, you know, I always get a bit of abuse normally in the chat box for when I bring that up. So I'm glad there's somebody else on this webinar today that is passionate about it. But for me, it's important, again, if we look at why we become healthcare professionals, why we become therapists, is hopefully we always want to do a really good job and we want to get the best out of it. And what we're saying is, you know, yeah, it's good that we feel like we've done a good job and the customer might feel better. But if we can actually look at the data and show the differences we're making, I think that's really, really important for two elements. One, we can look at it and go, we are doing a good job, and it reassures us as a business. But secondly, it might show we're not doing something very well, which then allows us to kind of reflect backwards and go, okay, so what do we need to improve on? I think is a really important thing. So I
think the feedback, I think, can be quite difficult. It can be difficult to stomach, and it can be quite confronting sometimes. So one thing we mentioned before the recording was that retention is a real problem. And I think some people, and myself included in my early career, struggled to actually hear, why was it that someone didn't come back? It's very easy to just say, well, I don't know. Well, what about all the people that use Rehab Guru but never give us their feedback? Have they got something to say that we don't want to hear? And actually having the stomach to say, tell me everything that you hate about our product because we want to make it better. Tell me everything that you didn't like about the clinic visit that you had. And I think that sort of clinic, although that feedback is hard to hear, that's the feedback that you need to hear if you want to get better and ultimately provide a better service. And you mentioned, and I think it's useful for people to hear, because I've not worked in the private practice space for over 10 years, maybe 15 years. And to hear your sort of analytical and business mind about, you know, how much you need to retain versus how much you need as new business. And actually for us, we're trying to, you know, convince people that they can provide a better service for their patients, but actually they need to consider staff retention. You know, people want to work in a clinic where they've got really motivated patients. They've got patients that love going there. That's a really nice environment to work in. And if you can provide a clinic for your staff where everyone's motivated, the patients are motivated, they love coming there, they tell you they're friends. And actually, I think that's really, really important. So I don't know how many people are on the webinar who are maybe Rehab Guru users, who are maybe new to Elevate Your Clinic, but I think it's a really nice way to bridge the gap between, well, they haven't, you know, we haven't retained that person, they've not come back after their first appointment, and then feeling a little bit gutted inside, a little bit like, oh, did I do something wrong? But actually they're beyond that, once you get over that, you can actually learn loads of stuff. And I think the business stuff that you bring is so powerful.
And I think there's two elements for me in that. I think the first one is that, retention. So obviously the listeners didn't hear us off camera, but one of the things we talked around was people are driving so much to get these new customers in and forgetting about how to look after them once we've got them. And I think that's a massive important part of it. You talked around staff retention. Interesting, isn't it? That, again, this apparently there's this big crisis in recruitment of physios. There's a big crisis in recruitment of patients. Okay, so if a patient doesn't know the process of what they're going to go through because they're not being informed, their exercises, you don't send them, for example. That's the classic one, isn't it? You say you're going to do something and don't do it, which I'm sure not even your software can read minds of therapists yet, but we can add that to the
on the feature list, yeah.
On the feature list, yeah. So, it's one of those things. But also, many staff, when they join an organization, it can be quite daunting, can't it? If you've gone through different, both of you have gone through lots of different services, and I'm sure each time you went into a new one, it's that unfamiliar sensation. Whereas if you have a lovely process, so you know how to do a consultation, you know how to use their exercise, you know how to communicate with the patient along the journey, you know how to discharge them, you know how to get review. Isn't that easier knowing the process as a person coming in? But also you can track your own success. And I think there's some, from their own clinical perspective, if you've got data to say, listen, I am doing a good job. We all do have days, don't we, where we end the day and we go, I don't know if I've done a good job today. But actually, sometimes if there's things you can reflect back on to say, actually, I am doing something really, really well. I think that's really important.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, you hit upon a quote there from Peter Drucker, I think, who said, "If you can't grow it if you don't measure it," kind of thrown out very often. But how do you even measure stuff is a pretty difficult one. But just coming back to that kind of customer-led product development, it takes somebody who's quite humble to take some of that feedback on the chin, and but once that has been done, once you kind of adopt the growth mindset to accept that, for Rehab Guru now, we used to have a lot of guesswork. What should we build next? What feature do people want? And you would have a bit of a leap of faith. Once you build something, will people want it? But now we don't have any of that. We have got such a validated model for what we're going to build next, because on customer support, people ask something and go, can I do this? No, but how do you envisage that looking? If we did build that, could you join a working group and we'll build it together? You not only get the product that, the exact product that you're wanting, but you're also helping us. And then you start to foster this really kind of fertile ground for a community that want to invest in your product. And those are kind of customers for life then, because, they've been listened to. And I think if you can foster that same type of things in other businesses, then you're in a really good place, because the customers are king. They have all the answers, unfortunately.
Well, they have the answers. We've got to ask the question, though. And I think one of the things that you said there, and again, another tip that I think is so replicatable, is you're saying what you've done at Rehab Guru, but actually, what a lovely thing that people should be doing in their own businesses. And actually, let's be totally honest. If someone is saying not great things about you or telling their mate what you could do better, that's not going to help you grow and develop your business at all. Whereas if they're telling you, yeah, sometimes it might be a bit, it depends how your ego is. If you're not very good at taking feedback, but if that one idea then changes the way you run your processes and your systems and creates you a better business and a better service and allows you to grow, then you have to just take these things on the chin, don't you?
Yeah, I think that the manner that you ask for that feedback as well, because there's some very, very cold kind of just fire out a questionnaire, or how is kind of customer feedback, whereas that personal touch, where you just go, it really means a lot to us to try and offer a really good service. Do you mind giving me sort of 5 minutes to give me some real honest feedback, one-to-one, just throw me a time to chat and we'll jump online and chat or something. That might not be in a physio's kind of workflow at all, but the information that you'd get back would be absolutely pivotal in what decisions you make. It might be just like one little thing. It's just like, oh, well, you know, I didn't get a, you know, I left a voice message and no one got back to me. And we're like, well, we don't do voice messages anymore. You know, we've not had access to our answer phone for ages, or, you know, whatever it might be. But it's just like absolute gems that you get from like warm customer communication, not just firing out a questionnaire. It's got to be, you know, it's got to be accepted by the patient, and that's where you're going to get good quality information back, as opposed to just, you know, fives across the 1 to 5 chart. You know, everyone's just going to go right in the middle. So quality over quantity, I think, is key with that feedback.
Certainly.
I think there's some feedback that I saw recently. One of our customers, and he's someone that we've worked with before, showed me something that I just thought was fantastic. And I wonder if I could share my screen with you just to give you an idea of what exactly it looks like. There's if anyone's used Rehab Guru, you'll see that there is a software that we use called Loom, and I'm a huge fan of it for customer service support. So hopefully you'll be able to see my screen in just a second. So hopefully you can see Loom. Loom is this this platform that I'm just on at the moment, and we use it for creating really, really useful videos. So after a demo, I might, for example, I might be on the Rehab Guru screen here, for example, and I've got Loom attached to my toolbar. So I can load up a video, and it's got a little video of me here, picks up on the audio cue, and then it records the screen as well. Connects to your iPods, and then you know, you start recording. So what this person was doing with some of their patients is they were moving to the reporting page, the reporting filter here on the person's account, and they were able to show some of the feedback that the patient had been giving. So we can see here on Rehab Guru, you've got the different days where the person has done their rehab exercises. The bar represents their compliance. So on this day, they didn't do any exercises. And then you've got the line graphs, which represent the health outcomes that you can track on Rehab Guru. Well, talk about retention. If you look on here and there is no data, then you can send a little video just saying, hi, hope you're getting on well. I've had a look and I've noticed that you haven't logged any sessions. Or if you did log a session, you weren't able to do all of the exercises. Is there anything more we can do to help support you? You might click on a particular one of these days. I'll just pick up another one. Let's try this one here. And as you do a deeper dive, you can see any comments that the patient has written. So the patient is able to use the client app, the Rehab Guru client app, and they can follow their progress. They can tell you how they're doing with all the health scores, what parameters, you know, what reps and sets, and then they can give you real-time feedback. So whether you just want to help support someone through their journey and make sure that you retain them as a customer, this particular customer of ours was making these Loom videos showing that they were actually taking an interest in their patient's health, in their patient's rehab, and then just giving them a little bit of encouragement. And they did that 24 hours after each of their patient consultations. So they might not have seen that patient for another 5 days, but they were actually providing the person with a little bit of extra care. It maybe took them 2 or 3 minutes, but that 2 or 3 minutes is providing such a high quality service to their patients that they noticed their retention rates just soared. People were telling their friends, people were coming back, people were then sending messages, thanks so much for this. I've absolutely, you know, loved your video. I'm just going to stop sharing now. But that's a really, really nice way of how feedback can be given. So you can get that feedback from Rehab Guru, but also you can use it in really creative ways. So this is something
that's
I
awesome.
thought I'd show you.
I didn't know about that, Dave. That's could you imagine being the patient receiving that? You'd just be like, holy smokes, this guy really cares about what I'm doing. I'm going to work my socks off for them. You know, it's a little bit like leadership, isn't it?
But I so love that example, and I think one of the things that we also showed was a little bit of your software and what it can create. So, you know, from there, what I saw from that. So I don't know if a non-Rehab Guru users, what happens is, if I've got this right, so correct me, is that once you've given exercises, not only can the patient then comment, but they can rate how well they did it, were they able to achieve it, they can comment on it. So was it painful? Was it not painful? Was it too easy? Was it too hard? So you can also get real life, like you said, snapshots of where they are, which I think it is quite in a lot of therapy businesses unknown. We give someone an exercise, like you say, we don't see them for 5 days.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, well, what we're saying here around feedback is your software actually allows a patient who might be doing their exercises 2, 3 times a day to give 3 sets of feedback per day almost, aren't they?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so it kind of changes that business model a little bit so that you can actually understand what's happening when they're away from the clinic. So you get away from this very transactional sort of 30-minute appointment. In that 30 minutes, you need to receive the download from the patient as to how things have been going. Then you need to do the treatment, and then you need to do the kind of, finishing up with them as issuing the new exercises or whatever. Like, what if you are so armed with information ahead of that appointment that when they come in, you can just get straight into it? It's just like, look at the charts and go, oh, I see that you've been, not getting on well with this particular exercise. I'm going to swap that out today. Chances are I see that your pain's been high, but it's, also your wellness is high as well. So you're obviously feeling quite good. Like, there's so much kind of information within that data that's collected whilst you're you don't have to ring them up and say, oh, how are you feeling today? Oh, how are you feeling today? To like 1,000 patients. This is all on autopilot. So it's just all been piled into a database. We do all of the crunching of numbers and then just show it to you on a chart. And a really cool feature that's coming out in the next few months is the ability to sort of set parameters or alerts. So if somebody does trigger really high pain, you'd be like, right, I'm going to reach out to them. So you then into this reactive model of actually understanding and just having some sensors out on every sort of single patient, and then being able to react to whatever is reported back to you. So yeah, kind of changing business models a little bit, but definitely gives you the tools to be able to offer incredible customer service.
I think it's really powerful because I think we all know that sometimes patients come in and they don't always tell us just exactly how bad things are. And you can send someone away with a program and you think that they're going to be absolutely fine with it. And, why do people not come back after their first session? Maybe they started the rehab when they were in 7 out of 10 pain. They thought, I'm not doing this. Well, if you just have a post and ghost, there's your program, I've emailed it to you, I'll see you in a week, that doesn't really allow you to understand how the person's doing. So some of the features on Rehab Guru, what Simon's alluded to, is alerting, but also you can view your caseload and you can filter that caseload by who's done their exercises and who hasn't, who's had a pain score of more than 3 out of 10, for example. So that actually, if you send someone away, I know on the Therapy Expo is coming up, isn't it? I think one of the headlines is "Patients lie to us. What are we going to do about it?" I thought it's just like a really eye-catching title for a presentation, but actually it is so true. And actually, we think we've got the measure of a patient. We think we know how much pain they're in, but actually, when they're in the comfort of their own home and they're on a client app and they're telling you actually how much pain they're in, actually you get a different idea, you get different feedback. And so that's really, really important to understand, because you might actually help that person a little bit more by intervening after day 1 when you've seen their feedback, rather than waiting to a week to find that they cancelled their appointment.
But I think that's a proactive approach rather than reactive, in the basis that as a business that you can, if you can see that, especially I love that it can send alerts if you know that somebody, and I think you're right. I think especially if people are unfamiliar with doing loading exercises or physio or therapy, whatever you go to, if you're new to it, you don't know what to expect. So you do just kind of go, yeah, it's, I expect it's going to work. But then, when you're getting 7s and 8s at home, they're going, yeah, I think this is doing me good. Where actually you can go, I've noticed this is really quite high. Why is this not doing me good? No, maybe this is too, why don't we try something a bit less, and then we'll build back up to that.
Yeah.
Because again, there's if you're unfamiliar, or if someone's doing it and they can do 30 reps, then you might turn around and go, that's too easy. I think we may need to make that a bit harder, you know. And I really like that approach. And I think and again, that does change the business model, but doesn't that help us be proactive? Doesn't it help us communicate better? And doesn't that help the whole experience kind of just grow? And I think the thing for me is that if you are looking at your business and you are looking to try and improve your processes and systems, this is surely something that has got to help. Like you said, it's automated. You know, as long as we can make it's time efficient, then it's got to be a must, right?
Yeah, I think one thing that we mentioned, I think one thing that's just come up of me in my mind is the idea of service, and how can we provide the best service possible. And one thing that you mentioned earlier on, Andy, before the recording, was the fact that, you know, people are aware we're going into a bit of an economic, you know, downturn, and people are worried about spending money. Will they get a return on their investment? What we're hearing from our customers is that those who have placed themselves at the top, you know, they've got a Covent Garden clinic, they've got a clinic in a really swanky place, they are providing the best towels, they've got the best clinics, they've got the best equipment. They are not seeing any drop within their retention rates. They're not seeing any drop in their numbers, because those people can afford it. And if we want to provide the best service, then we sometimes do need to have the courage to change what we're doing, change our business model, change the software, change the equipment that we're using, and then provide a better service, knowing with a bit of faith and maybe a bit of grace thrown in as well, that actually we're going to attract the better customers. We're going to attract the people that are really motivated, and they're so motivated to get better, they're going to pay out of their own pocket. They're going to do their exercises when they say they will. They're going to turn up to the appointments rather than DNAing us. And actually, having worked in private practice myself, when people pay out of their own pocket, they do seem to, in my opinion, and from my memory, you know, that they are those more motivated patients. And I think actually, if we align ourselves with that, then I think we're onto a winner.
And there's a few points for me that came from that. There's the best, so providing best, but then there's being consistently providing best, which I think, you know, there's nothing worse, is there, that when, you know, a patient comes in, you're dead good with them, you provide them loads, you do that follow-up call, but then the following week, you haven't got time to do the follow-up call, or you haven't got the time to look at the data. So what happens is service goes down, doesn't it? Whereas what we're saying with this software is it sits there in the background all of the time. So it doesn't matter if we forget, the software is always, so all we've got to do is log in, and that if you set the parameters up, so you then get consistent of care. And I think that's also important because, you know, one of the things that we talk around is this raving fan culture, so that you have a great service that you want to go and tell other people. Well, if you've had a great service, so, you know, if I then turn around and Phil's been to you guys and he's gone, oh, that's amazing, and then goes, you know, comes and tells John goes, he gets a different service. I don't know what you're on about, Phil. They don't bloody ring me. You know what I mean? It's like, they don't ring me every other day to tell me I'm doing my exercises well or not. All of a sudden, it's like, all right, maybe I was just special. But John's not happy. He's mad at Phil. And then all of a sudden, the reputation, whereas, so I think there's having the best service, but being able to do it consistently, I think is absolutely paramount, because we see that a lot, and especially smaller businesses, when they're starting off on their own, they've got all this passion and enthusiasm, they try and grow, and then they realize, and that's what can lead to burnout, you know. And that's the other problem that we see, and we saw loads during the pandemic, and we're seeing even now, because people are getting so kind of irate or stressed with what's going on. They're trying so hard to impress everybody, they're actually burning themselves out. Whereas what we're saying is, if we can stop, look at the processes we've got, recognize what we can do things better. You know, one of the reasons why in our 10-step process we've got feedback in there and follow-ups in there is the fact that it is all about that, and then how do we create them, move them onto that raving fan. So I think that's brilliant. Yeah. One of the things I also want to touch on with you guys that I loved about in this customer service perspective was, you know, I still hear it all the time of patients communicating with the therapists out of hours, or, you know, dropping the odd WhatsApp just to see because I've got their number. So what do you find with therapists that use Rehab Guru? Because obviously it's all on the platform. How do they feel that it's all in one place and it saves their world, should we say?
I mean, yeah, firstly, they're in control. So, you know, they're not having, it's a little bit like using your inbox as your to-do list. Everyone has got access to your to-do list if there's an inbox. Well, yeah, control. And as we extend our messaging features to have, you know, sort of two-way messaging, a little bit like, you know, sort of like a WhatsApp type communication, we're building out the tools that give you the ability to filter that based on, you know, which patients you want to receive any information from, when you will be alerted about things out of hours, getting people to, you know, to stick to communication sort of times, so that, I mean, it's an interesting point. The burnout is something that is rife amongst private practices, because the business model kind of lends itself to it, in that if you're a sole clinic owner, you've got a one-to-one relationship. If you're not treating patients, you're not necessarily earning. So how do you scale that business? You either stretch yourself more hours, increase your prices, or you grab another room and another therapist. And then, you know, that's traditionally how that business model has worked. So capacity, and the clinician's capacity is really important. So using tools and strategies that allow you to increase your own capacity of having communication on autopilot and actually choosing when you respond, rather than everybody having access to your inbox, especially on your personal phone or something like that. I think there's definitely some health aspects to it, and consistency is king, but also sustainable, high quality patient experiences. That is what gets reputations of clinics really, really high, is just that constant ability to be performing really, really well. And you can't do that in a, you know, it's definitely a marathon, not a sprint. You can't just go, I'm going to do awesome customer service this week, and I'm going to be burnt out Saturday, Sunday. You know, so being able to sustain that is a big part of the tools that we build to be able to give clinicians capacity.
No, and that's certainly what I saw when I looked at it. I thought that's something which really aligns with what we talk around a lot, and think that's, you know, a lovely way to do it, really. And, you know, the fact that you also, if you're building your processes in so that you can find time during the week to be proactive and to be checking in, then people still feel that being connected, aren't they? You know, and I think one of the things that I certainly took from that is that, and I hope everybody in the audience listening and or watching the recording get that, it's more important, in my opinion, to ensure that that one person that comes in, where the first time you meet them, you help them achieve, or you set that outcome, you help them get it to it. You know, that's the thing. We all love that bit, don't we? Of, you know, for how many years? For 20 odd years, I still buzz off seeing somebody achieve their outcome. You know, it doesn't matter if it's in the professional sporting world, which we've all been fortunate to work in, or if it is, you know, someone who's had a hip replacement in their 80s that now are able to drive, go and do the shopping on their own, and do the gardening and live the life that they want to live. That's still a fantastic outcome for that individual. And I think that's what hopefully we're all trying to achieve with our jobs. And that's what builds our reputation, that we are starters and finishers, you know, and I think that's the big part.
So Andy, we've got a question in the chat, which I think is kind of pertinent to the point we're making here from Siobhan around service-based invoicing rather than time. So there's this whole piece here about a quality outcome versus an appointment base. So I just wonder whether David and Simon, you've got a view on that.
Yeah, I was just going to link into the same thing, but Dave, you go. Am I going? I'll go first, then you.
I'll go then. So
go ahead, your floor.
The things that I was just going to jump to, just reiterating a point. If you see some data saying that someone's struggling, you can offer someone a telehealth appointment. We've got Zoom integrations as well as our own 2 telehealth platforms that if you wanted to use those. So being able to provide an ad hoc appointment for someone, say 2 days after their first appointment, where you just need to adjust a rehab program. Or let's say someone calls and says, you know, I had an appointment last week, I've got an appointment tomorrow, I'm not going to be able to make it. Well, would you like, you know, we can still provide you a service, a remote service at distance that's going to be allowing us to change your program, progress your rehab. And connected with what you were saying, Andy, was also this idea of providing a service that can actually be not just transactional, because I think those of us that have worked in the NHS, those of us that have worked in the MOD, is often not just about how do I get you out of pain. And Andy, you and I have spoken about this before, about, you know, someone comes in with Achilles. Well, you might not be able to get them better in 6 appointments, because if they want to get back to basketball, to rugby, to soccer, it's quite likely that they're going to need months and months of rehab, and they might need 12 sessions. And one of their goals, aside from being out of pain, might be that they want to give up smoking. It might be that they want to lose some weight. It might be that they want to, you know, fit back into those clothes that are, you know, something that's health related. And so one of the other things that I was just going to show you on Rehab Guru was some of the health tracking that you can set up, because actually part of our job that's really rewarding is that real transformational change that we see in patients. And, you know, if someone's able to work and they, you know, you've helped them with their pain, but actually there's nothing meaningful about that change, then it can feel a little bit transactional. So one thing that's lovely is when someone says, oh, I haven't played with my kids in ages. I went and played football with them the other day and I wasn't out of breath and I was able to play with them the whole time. And like, it really changes their life. And so when you're in Rehab Guru, in the creator at the moment here, this is where you would create and send programs. On the publish page, when you're sending it, we've now got this and have had for a year or two, this client reporting feature. So you might want to measure pain. And that may be the main reason that the person came into your clinic to start with. And you might want to find out how their pain is after each exercise, so you can measure whether that exercise is at the right level for them. Or maybe you might need to change the exercise or change the parameters. But beyond that, they might say, oh, I'm struggling sleeping. And actually you give them some breathing exercises or some meditation or something like that. And as soon as they start sleeping better, actually their whole life starts changing. And so you can then tell me, you know, how was your pain at the beginning of each day? Generally, how well are you feeling? You've got all these other things that you can start tracking to help people focus on, you know, the parts of their life that are also going to bring you as the clinician that really rewarding feeling that you can really change someone's life. You've not just sort of allowed them to get back to basketball. There's so many other parts of their life that pervade through their health. And so once you've set that up, you can assign the program. And talking about automation, you know, has someone come back after a week? Or, you know, you were saying, Andy, that 30% of many people only turn up for one appointment and then don't turn up again. And actually, to make sure that we stop these people falling through the net, we can now set a duration on the program. So it might be that we have an appointment today on the 21st, and we want to set an alert on the 29th. And so on the 29th, in a week's time, I'm going to decide that I'm going to have a Rehab Guru alert me. So Rehab Guru sends me an email in a week's time saying Andy's program has just finished. And then I can check all of their charts. I can check whether they're booked in. I can get a bit more information. And if I need to, if I haven't already, I can pick up the phone to them. I can, you know, send them an email. And hopefully that is just something else that's going to transform the service that we provide. So we provide a little bit higher service and also just help people to achieve the goals that they want to. So before I start waffling, I'll hand over to Simon to probably talk more eloquently.
No, I mean, on that point, I was trying to think about how I used to look at people's rehab when I was working in the Air Force. And I would take what I'd learned in elite sport and try and treat everybody as if they were an elite athlete, but just on a on a lower level, you reduce the loads, but they still need everything that goes with it, the nutrition, the right dosage, the right rest, and everything else. And I think if you're able to offer that, so they come in, what are your goals? And there is this multifaceted approach to getting them to achieve their goals. And that might be, right, we'll put you onto, you know, like a subscription. If you're happy to work with me, this is what I would, you know, like to set up. It is a monthly cost of whatever, but within that, you know, I'll be offering complete oversight of your training programs. There is the option to write in, to message me. I'll be monitoring things. There is up to X number of appointments per month or whatever it might be. So I think that's where I'm coming from with this kind of like entrepreneurial side of things, of redefining business models and trying to have, as Siobhan said, you know, like a service-based approach, as opposed to this transactional pay for appointment, pay for 30 minutes, an hour session. Kind of quite passionate about that, to be able to arm the clinicians with the tools that they need to be able to offer this remote and hybrid type working.
I think that subscription model is really powerful. I think that's just something that's so new, and people are so used to paying for subscriptions for Amazon Prime, for Netflix. You know, Amazon Prime is a perfect example because they don't just get things through the post. They can watch the autumn rugby series now because they've got Amazon. You know, that they're used to subscribing to a service that gives them loads of things. So why wouldn't they do that with their healthcare? Why wouldn't they do that with their local physio clinic? I think it's a great idea.
I think it's a really interesting dimension to this, and I guess the challenge for the therapy business owner, if I read Siobhan's question a slightly different way, which is, I can understand the notion of subscribing to get well as the customer. I guess the question is, the challenge then becomes, as the business owner, how do you particularly if you've got an associate based model, it's then how do you compensate the associates or employees for the effort they're putting into that customer journey. I don't know whether Andy's got a view on this as well from a business owner point of view, but I think that's my take on that theme.
I think for me, I certainly think the holistic view, if we can, I know it's an overplayed word, but the fact that, you know, when we're looking at somebody's recovery, you know, it's the recovery to do the rehab, but like you said, are they eating enough? Are they sleeping enough? Because if they're not sleeping, that's where we recover. So I think all of those things are actually massive points that I know there are quite a lot of therapists now banging that drum. And the fact that you guys have already got that in place, I think is fantastic for those people that are thinking that way, because it's already there, isn't it? You know, we don't have to just be, you know, especially if patients then have to tell people their sleep quality. I'm a sleep geek. I track my sleep. I track my food. I've got I track everything. So it's like, so for me, all of this is just brilliant, because it's stuff I do on a regular basis anyway. So I can give you all that data, Simon, if you want. Can even tell you my last 12 months of nutrition. But I think that's but it's the way we're going, you know. And so I think there is going to be change, and I think a lot of businesses do need to be brave, because it's unfamiliar, isn't it? You know, what Siobhan's saying and what you guys are saying about subscription models. Can we possibly do that in physio or in therapy? Because it's not been done. Of course we can. At the end of the day, it's the fact is, what we've got to do as a business is work our way to provide the best service for our clients. Just because it's not the traditional way doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means it's different. And, you know, Amazon, it's an outliner, isn't it? You know, from the fact of it sold books, and then it went, right, what else can we sell? And then what else can we stream? And then, you know, they're always outlining and always finding different ways to do things. And I think, you know, from an entrepreneurial perspective, like you said, Simon, you know, you can be different. And if that suits a customer better, then they're going to come. You know, you can't say a prescription model doesn't work. People pay how much a month to go to a personal training only gym. So that's it. It's just, it's not been done a lot of the time in the physio world, you know, but there's no reason why it can't.
Yeah.
So I think
a question I have for you guys is clearly I'm the non-therapist on the webinar tonight. Seems to be a very flexible system, massive amount of data that patients, customers, clients can have access to. How do you typically introduce it to a business, and how do the leaders? I'm always kind of fascinated on leadership, management, culture change type stuff. So the data's there, but of course we need to engage the therapists actually to be using it and then engaging with the clients. What kind of support, what experience have you got in that area?
Yeah, great question for that. And we're definitely on the same wavelength. I was just going to jump in and try and temper some of the kind of like data techie stuff with, like what's the first step on this ladder, and how do we support people in taking that step? I mean, firstly, if you're at the space where you're digitizing your stickmen, then absolutely that is probably, start off with that. But the kind of redefining workflows is a really, really potentially disruptive thing for a business. And we're not saying that, it is, jump in, everything's kind of digital, you're going to throw away everything that you do before. And it is really about tool selection. And Rehab Guru is a tool that can be an adjunct to your business. And just sprinkle it in to where things are needing a little bit of additional customer service. So it might be that you just start to use it for exercise prescription, none of the other bells and whistles. But then after a while, you're like, well, I'm comfortable with that, because there aren't that many kind of techie physios. There's a lot of kind of up and coming progressive people that are just like, show me the tech, show me the data, and I'm all in. Whereas actually the bulk of the industry are, I mean, I'll probably regret saying this on a podcast that's going to be mailed out, but we deal very much in support in holding people's hand and integrating something that they know they need to adopt. They know they need to start digitizing their notes, but they're like, I'm really not comfortable in this world. So I think that's where we've been doing quite a lot of educating and hand-holding and hundreds of demos to look at how you currently operate and go, right, maybe there's an opportunity here to sprinkle in a little bit of this, see how you feel. And then after that, once you've taken the gateway drug of Rehab Guru, you can then start to use it for treatment notes, your bookings, your automated reminders, and all of that stuff as well. So I think that's where I come from. That I'm not sure if that's answered your question, Phil, if you've got any take on that, Dave, but I think that's where we're coming from.
Yeah, I think that you make a really interesting point that Simon and I are always trying to flesh out is how can we make the platform accessible for people that are just transitioning to tech and those who want more. So an example of that is the reporting that I just showed you and the time frame. If they were on the screen the whole time, it would clutter the page, and people that are not familiar with lots of tech, it might just be too much. So some of those features are hidden. But also, as we were talking about earlier, like Johnny age 5 over here with tech, like I think people were daunted that if they ask a question and they ask for customer service support, that they're going to feel like a wally, and that they're going to be treated like some old person that doesn't know tech. And actually within our company, the reason I think we're getting so much traction is that, yes, Simon is amazing at software and software development, but also we've got me, who is a therapist and who is not a complete nerd. And I bring the balance to Rehab Guru, where I sort of try and make sure that it is accessible for the therapists who have just loved treating patients. I'm not as crazy about data, but I do love tracking my sleep. I love, tracking my diet. I do that sort of stuff. And if someone is just trying to, maybe test the water or put one foot on the treadmill and think, is this going to be okay? Well, I'd say just try it with the odd person. So if you're going to use an exercise prescription platform or a note system or whatever it is, like Rehab Guru, if you just try tracking their health outcomes and their compliance with just one person and just see what feedback you get, see how it goes. I tried it with one of my friends from London, and he works in software, and he loved it, and he was asking for more and more data. And I think we're at risk of projecting our own values onto our patients because we love health. That's why we're healthcare professionals. We love sleep. We love, medicine. But actually, a lot of the people that are coming to us who would give us a subscription for, their healthcare, they don't understand healthcare. They don't understand what is and isn't good sleep. They don't understand what is and isn't good exercise. And they want to be healthy, and they would happily pay for it, much like, people would happily pay for software because they don't know how to create it themselves, but they know that it's really useful and they know they need to do it. And so with that subscription model, I think it's absolutely acceptable to jump into that and just test it with a few people. It might not work for everyone, but it might do. And then to obviously come around to answering your question, I'd say to people, just, dip their toe in the water. And if they end up just using Rehab Guru, like Simon said, just to replace the stick man, then so be it. But it's always there for them to try if they want it.
I think the only addition I'll do before we go to questions maybe is that, also remember that as we are, and we kind of opened with, is when we launch anything new, that we are making sure we're getting customer feedback to make sure that's, it's not overwhelming as well, isn't it? As well as us going, what else can we provide for you? If we tracked your sleep, would that be helpful? Yeah. For some people, it might just be, you're giving me too much to do. Okay, cool. Let's we can dial it back at different ways. And I think and for some, like you say, that for, one of the things that I think you guys have created is the ability for a business to, wherever you are on a platform, you can jump in, can't you? And it's a platform that you can grow with as well. If you're saying that you want to develop over time, you're just moving from the pen and paper, and but in 2 years' time you want it to look like this. Well, your patients are going to just that even if it is with the exercise software, it's going to look similar, isn't it? It's just little increments over time are going to make change, and so you can grow on the same system. There's nothing worse, isn't it, than getting a system and go, oh, I want to upgrade. Oh, I've got to start again. So I think what you guys have got is you've got the ability to grow your whole business from start to finish on the same platform, which I think is lovely. So if we go to questions, see if there is any.
Yeah, I think we've answered the Siobhan's was the main question, and I've just put a prompt out, but I think people are possibly conscious of time.
While people are so again, just maybe to finish, how would you guys, it'd be interesting, how do we find, for people that, are going, we need this, or want to learn more about what you guys offer, can you just give a bit of a snippet of how they can find you?
Yeah, sure. Rehabguru.com, or just Google Rehab Guru. We're also available on all the social media platforms as well. If you just search for Rehab Guru. We are not the clinic in Arizona. We are the digital exercise prescription tool. So yeah, you can find us on social. If you want to book a demo, it's probably one of the best ways of getting to grips with the software. Then just reach out to us at support@rehabguru.com, and then we can book you in for a demo. And then you can ask any questions. Of Dave's doing the bulk of the demos at the moment, but it's it could be one of the rest of the teamers who've all got clinical backgrounds as well. So you're speaking to like-minded people when you're receiving a demo. So that's what I'd recommend. Question, just seen a question pop up, which I'll try and answer.
Yeah,
okay, cool.
Yeah,
there you go. That's
fabulous.
Good. And again, we'll stick all the links. So again, if you found this useful, then, please do tell us what was good about it. Again, as always, feedback when we send our newsletter out after this, with the following up. If you get any feedback, then you can pass it on to us, and we'll share it with with these two wonderful gentlemen. Get it in twice for you, Simon. So it's honestly, lads, I've loved it. I think the passion you both have for this industry, the vision you both have to help therapy business owners, I think is amazing. I think it's something, I think the product's fantastic. You know, everyone I've spoken to that uses it raves about it and loves it. I think what you've created is great. And I hope therapy business owners start to, you know, there's been some really nice insights that we can share. And when they're ready, hopefully they transition over to you.
Right. Thank you.
So thank you all very, very much. Thanks all once again for watching. And please do, as always, share this video with your friends. Thank you very much.